Hello, I'm Laura from the Mercer County Library System. I'm a librarian in our Information Technology Department, and today I'm going to be talking to you about borrowing ebooks from our eLibraryNJ service, which is part of our virtual branch. This is the eLibraryNJ website, which you can get to by going to www.elibrarynj.com, or if you're on our website, if you look under Branches and Virtual Branch, you'll come to our Virtual Branch page, which will also have information about our other online content, such as Flipster magazines, the ebooks and the audiobooks from eLibraryNJ, Freegal Music, and our Hoopla music, movies, ebooks, audiobooks, and TV shows and comic books. So on the eLibraryNJ website, you can also use the Libby app, by the way, which is available in the App Store, Google Play Store, or in the Microsoft Store as well. And the Libby app will allow you to do the same things that we're going to show you how to do on the website today, which is basically you can search for and check out ebooks or digital audiobooks. For both of them, what you'll do is you'll log on. At the top of the website, it usually says log in here. I've already gone and logged in. When you do log in with both the Libby app and the website, you'll see a drop down. You'll pick Mercer County Library System from the drop down, and then just type in your barcode from your library card. The barcode is the 14 digits that you'll see, and it'll be 14 digits without any spaces is what you'll want to type in. And that's all you need to get started. We do have, as I mentioned, ebooks and audiobooks. Right here on this top collection that's highlighted, we can see examples of both. The ebooks have an icon underneath of the title with the book icon, and it says ebook. Audiobooks have a headphone icon and the word audiobook. You'll notice that some titles say they're available and some say there's a wait list. We do have different copies of the titles in here. Even though it's digital, we do have to purchase a copy for each person who wants to use it. So we do have books that will say there's a wait list. For those, you may go ahead and place a hold. You'll see that option on here as well. The ones that are available allow you to borrow them, and the ones that are checked out, you may place a hold on. In order to place a hold, you'll only be asked to enter your email address. That's so when the hold becomes available, you'll get an email notifying you that you have 72 hours to pick up the hold. And I'll show you where you can do that in the My Account section after we go over the service a little bit. So we do have, as I mentioned, ebooks and audiobooks, and you'll see a bunch of browsing collections on the main page. Usually there's one just added that stays, so you'll see the newest things that have been added, but then the other ones will be topical. Usually has something to do with the month that's going on, or it might have such as this area here, the real reading, which is related to books that have been made into movies. So you'll see some curated collections of different topics there. Okay, at the top, the featured one will also usually be topical for the month. So this is being recorded in March, so we have Women's History Month, so that's why this collection is highlighted. You can also do a search by clicking on the search button right at the top and either type in an author or a title to look for. We'll do a search in a minute. I wanted to point out a couple of things. In addition to these areas where we have topical ones, we do have 4 curated collections that are permanent. There is a kids page, and these books are mostly chapter books, and some of the picture books will be in here as well. So we're talking about probably K to 8 basically in here. Maybe K to 6 will be showing up in the kids collection. Going back to the main collection, we also have the teens collection. And again, this is mostly high school kids, so it's young adult, but there will be some of those middle school, so you'll see some 7th and 8th grade reading in here as well. Going back to the main collection, the 2 other collections that we have that are curated is the romance and the mystery section. Again, this is just going to be your romance books that are highlighted, and there'll be subgenres that you'll see on here as well. like we did on the main page. And the same thing with the mysteries. There'll be areas where you can browse certain collections. There's always going to be a new section as well, but then again, you'll see themes that will show up on those pages. Okay, back on the main collection page, I had mentioned the search bar. So doing a search, if we want to find books by John Grisham, we just have to type in John Grisham and do a search, and we'll see a list of his books that are available. On the left, you can see ebooks and audiobooks. You can narrow your search results using these facets on the left. Since we're focusing on ebooks, I'm going to go ahead and click ebooks to expand that, because you'll see we have ebooks here, but if we flip through, we'll see it's a mix of ebooks and audiobooks. So if we want to narrow down to just ebooks, we can use the facets on the left. Notice there's 3 different types of ebooks on here. I'll talk about the 3 different types in a minute. But basically, anytime you see a title, most likely all 3 of these types of files will be available for you to download. I'm actually not going to narrow. I'm just going to go right in here to Gray Mountain so we can take a look at what one of these title pages looks like. You do have a ratings area. These are ratings from our patrons. eLibraryNJ is comprised of different libraries across New Jersey, over about 100 of them, and we are a member. You'll see that there's 20 copies that are available in the system, and 13 of them are currently available out of those 20. Some titles we do have extra copies that are reserved just for our patrons. So when I mentioned you could log in up here, that's probably what you want to do first before you even start searching, because that'll allow you to see the extra copies we've purchased. So you might, if you just go to the service and check on a title, see that it's checked out. But if you log in, you might see extra copies and it might be available for you to borrow. Okay, so we get the typical display you would see in a library catalog. There's a description. You can see more details and reviews. For the ebooks, I mentioned earlier, there's 3 different formats: Kindle, Overdrive Read, and the ebook. If you're using the Libby app, you're going to, by default, get the Overdrive Read version. And if you want to see what that looks like, we'll just click on Read a Sample here. And this is basically what the Overdrive Read version looks like as well. You get a reader that pops up in the screen within your browser. You don't have to download any special software. If you're using this on a tablet or a phone and you're using the Libby app, it just automatically opens for you without having to download anything. And you can basically just either tap the screen or swipe left and right to make or go through the pages. Now, this is a sample, so we don't have the full functionality, but if we did, we would see we have up here a couple of options for changing the font, etc. I'll show you that in a minute, because I'm just going to close this so we can talk about the other file formats before I check this out. The other version we have is the Kindle book and the EPUB ebook. Kindle book is for the plain ink, e-ink Kindle books, such as the Paperwhite and the Voyager. The EPUB version is for basically your Nooks or your Kobo readers, or if you have Adobe Digital Editions on your computer and you wish to use that. Essentially, if you're going to be using the book on a laptop, we do suggest you use the Overdrive Read version, because that's so much easier to use than worrying about downloading and installing Adobe Digital Editions and trying to use the EPUB ebook. If you're using a Kindle book with one of those e-ink readers, what will happen is when you select Kindle book at the checkout point, you'll be bumped into the Kindle, your My Kindle page, basically on Amazon.com. So if you're going to be borrowing for a Kindle, make sure you're logged in to your Amazon account before you start checking items out, because what will happen is you'll go to the page for that particular book, and instead of seeing the purchase option, you'll see a button that will say Borrow Library Book. At that point in time, you would control everything to do with the Kindle book through Amazon's website. So if you wanted to return it early, you would go to your Amazon account on Amazon.com and look for that title under Manage My Kindle, and you would be able to return it there. Items do get returned automatically, so you don't have to worry about returning it, but if you do finish it earlier and want to make sure it's released for somebody who might be on hold, you can go ahead and return it. The other thing is you're allowed to borrow 5 items at a time. So if you need to clear up some space on your list, you would want to return something early to get another option to borrow something. You're also allowed to place 5 holds at one time. So if a hold becomes available, you want to have a slot there so you can check it out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and borrow Gray Mountain. When we first get to the borrow page, you'll see you can have the option of borrowing it for 7, 14, or 21 days. Totally up to you how long you would like to check it out for. I'm going to opt for 7 days, and I'm going to click Borrow. The next pop-up will show me the 3 different file formats. I can close out of this if I want, and I can find this in the My Account section, or I can start reading in the browser, or I can opt to download the EPUB version. I'm going to go ahead and close this because I want to show you where to find this in the My Account area. And also that you'll see if you've borrowed something, you'll notice that the Borrowed button now says Go to My Loans. Okay, so on My Account, the first thing underneath of it is Loans. And this will give you a list of everything I have checked out. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, I can click now, Read Now with Kindle, or I can do one of these 2 options. Once you click Read Now with Kindle or Download EPUB, the other option disappears. So if you pick Kindle, you won't be able to download the EPUB version, and vice versa. So if you do have a Kindle, make sure you do select this option and don't opt to download. Another note about the Kindles, the Kindle Fire does not work with the Libby app, but there is an older version of the app called Overdrive Media Console that you can download and that will work on the Kindle Fire. So if you do want to read these on Kindle Fire, look for the old Overdrive app instead of the Libby app. Okay, so I mentioned earlier I'd show you some more features about the Overdrive Read version, which is the type of a book you would get if you read in the browser or use the Libby app. You'll see a new tab opens up with my book. I have the full color cover. Here are where my extra options are. This is where I can toggle between 2 pages or 1 page. I can search in the book, and I have expanded options on the menu bar here. So I can look at what chapters are available and just go directly to those spots in the book if I want to. I'm going to click on chapter 2 because the next thing I want to show you is if I close this tab and then click Read Now in Browser, it will remember where I was, which is great if you happen to start reading the book on a tablet and then maybe you go home and want to read a few pages or so on your laptop. You can do that and not have to worry about syncing where you were. The other options in here is you can add bookmarks. That's also what this tab does up here. I can add a bookmark, and then I will see that bookmark listed under bookmarks. I can also alter the reading settings, so I can do the size if I want to change the size. I can also change the lighting so I have a different background. And then I can choose different fonts if I'd like to. Note that there's an open dyslexic font here. So this is great if you've got a student who has dyslexia and needs to read books for book reports. You can just use the open dyslexic font right here in the Overdrive Read version. And when you're finished doing your alterations, you can go ahead and click Done, and it would be reflected on the text for you. So that's basically how to use an Overdrive Read copy. And again, you can just, as you'll see, the hand comes up as I scroll along. I can just drag to go through the pages. And if you were on a tablet, you could just tap left or right to go through. Okay. So the Overdrive Read was the read in browser option. As I mentioned earlier, the Kindle pretty much puts you back through the Amazon page, um, and you handle everything there. If I'm using the Overdrive Read version or I'm looking at this on the Libby app, I do have the option to return. Once you've selected Kindle or download an EPUB, this return option disappears. And as I mentioned with Kindle, you'd have to do a return from your Manage My Kindle page. For an EPUB, you would download Adobe Digital Editions, and it's pretty basic software where you would see pretty much a display like this where you would have the cover art, and then to open it you would just double click the cover art and start reading. If you have a e-reader like a Kobo e-reader or a Nook, you would then plug that into your computer via the USB and drag and drop this onto the device. The devices would show up listed on the left. And one option to return is in the upper right-hand corner, I believe it is. On Adobe Digital Editions, you'll see a contents options for the particular title in the corner of the cover art. And when you click on that, it gives you the option to return a library book. Okay, just a few quick other things to look at in here. I mentioned earlier you could place holds. If you had an item that came in that was available for you, well, first of all of your holds would show up here, whether they have come in or not. But when they are available, they would show up here with a button next to it that would say borrow. And you would just come in here and borrow the item. You also can do a wish list. And let me just quickly go back. Any book that's in the collection, you'll see this little, it looks like a bookmark with a plus. If I click on that, that's what adds it to my wish list. So you'll see there's that book I just added. You'll see whether they're available or whether or not there's a wait list for them. Will show up in the tab like it does on the main pages. And then you can either borrow or place a hold. So while you're limited to 5 holds, your wish list is limited to 5,000. So if you really would like to keep a whole record of what you want to read and you're not quite ready to put them on hold, you can add them to your wish list. Another thing that's kind of neat is if you rate books, that's one way of keeping your history so you can go back and look at books that you really liked. So if you wanted to read further in this particular series, if you rated this book, you would be able to see that. And then the last page is your settings. I had mentioned earlier you can choose whether or not you have a 7, 14, or 21-day checkout. By default, it's 14 days, but you can change that for yourself in here in the settings. You can see the ebooks and the audiobooks are different, so you can set them differently or different length of checkout if you'd like. We also have a library privacy law in New Jersey, so we're not allowed to keep your history of what you've read, but on this particular service you can opt into keeping your history. So if you want to keep your history of what you've read, you can go ahead and check this box. You can also set the content preference, so maybe this is a child's card and you wanted to set it for just juvenile and young adult. You can go ahead and do that. Or maybe you just want to see young adult and general adult, but not mature or juvenile. You can go ahead and do that as well. Note on the left, you can pick all audiences, but on the right, this isn't an escalating level. You have to pick the ones you're interested in. So if you want everything up to general adult, you have to click all 3 options. Lastly, the display. You can change the website, how it functions as well. So like the ebooks themselves, you can change the website to display in the dyslexic font. You can also opt to use high contrast if you have a reading disability or low vision, sorry. And that could change to the high contrast for that. Okay, so that is basically our eLibraryNJ ebook collection. We hope you enjoy it and, happy reading.